Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor. This show is for financial advisors who want to grow their business with clarity, lead with purpose, and build a life that reflects what matters most.
Welcome back. It's time for the Purpose Focused Advisor. Your host, Rob Brown, here with our special guest, Ryan Derousseau. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. In all transparency, I have to say this is a second go for Ryan and me. The last time we tried to do this, my computer blew up, and now thanks to Ryan, I have a new one. So Ryan, thanks for that.
Absolutely, it happens. I told you off air. I'm like the kiss of death with technology, so it must have been me.
Must have been you.
Yeah.
But other than that, Ryan is an active writer. He's been read by millions and published in some big magazines like Money, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and Forbes. But he is also a certified financial planner and an enrolled agent. So taxes obviously are important to Ryan. I'm sure we'll dig into that. And he is a jungle gym for his children.
Of course.
Ryan,
anyone with young kids know that.
Be careful what you put on your description on your website. So quite a background. So Ryan, I want to start by going back to your days as a writer for financial publications, ones that are well known. Mm-hmm. And I think back to the days when I was a financial advisor and Money magazine was the absolute enemy. It was like you had these clients, they were going along, they were doing their investing and their planning, and then all of a sudden they'd read something in Money magazine, and we'd always joke that it was probably from some 22-year-old who just finished college with a degree in English and never knew anything about investing, but their information, because it was in print, was more important than what we might be guiding our clients through. And so you have some perspective on that because you've written a lot. You're a writing expert.
Yeah, and I would say the people who do that are truly trying to put the best foot forward, because while the 22-year-old might be writing it, like the 30-year veteran is the one editing it, and those are the ones whose eyes you have to get past in order to get published. But there was a big shift that happened with Money, along with like all publications that followed all of financial planning world, in which, in the 70s and 80s, it was all about stock picking and finding which assets are going to like just bounce and whatnot. And by the time I was there, that was not what we were writing about at all. We were writing about much broader issues. We had to write some stock focused stuff because, let's face it, that's who was paying ad space in the magazine. But for the most part, we were writing more broad, goal-based financial planning material. And it's how I first learned about financial planners, because my first job was actually covering financial planners. And when in doing so, I learned about the different ways they are paid and their audience and how they go about creating changes for people. And eventually, after many years, I realized that's actually what I wanted to be doing with my time.
So we don't want to spend too much time talking about the past history of magazines, but I have to ask, what do you think it was that made that shift for the magazine from investment advice, stock tips, because we used to ask, where did you get that tip? Was it your cab driver, your barber, or from Money magazine? Yeah. So from stock tips to saying, hey, we actually can provide some financial planning guidance that's important. And I'm guessing that probably coincided with the increase of the number of financial professionals who move from being mostly investment focused to being planning focused.
Yeah, so I would think that was a long time coming. Those 22-year-old reporters, they would grow and learn and speak to sources, speak to people like financial planners, and learn about the ones that they actually trust. And then slowly slowly those 22-year-olds became 32-year-olds and 42-year-olds, and now they're in a position of power to a point where we had very strict criteria over what type of planners we could talk to, because we didn't want the stock pickers. We didn't want that sort of thing because we knew that's not where the coverage was going to go. But also, like, let's face it, it was also the research, the same research that was driving people to make the changes in the financial industry was making changes in the media industry as well.
Yeah. And so was it a chicken and egg thing? Which kind of came first?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's a good. My guess is the financial planning world started changing, and then the media world started adapting. Or I shouldn't say media world, because it was more money was leading the way. And it's a lot different than it is now. We don't have to go into the state of the media industry, but that I think they were one of the, like, just the other day, I read a piece in Newsday, because I'm in Long Island and that's our local newspaper. And it was about sort of the response, how to respond to the tariffs. And every like quote came from like a really large brokerage of some sort. And I had to write into the writers and be like, listen, like, this is what a financial planner is. This is what a fiduciary duty is. This is what a fee-based, commission-based financial planner does. And like, you need to know the difference. I would suggest you know the difference for it. And I'm coming at this because I know this. And so I think it's still something that people are learning today. So it's just a constant struggle that I'm sure your listeners deal with as well.
Yeah. And we're both, and my listeners are big fans of doing financial planning the right way. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's healthy to have some perspective, because not everybody is an old guy like me who's been at it a long, long time. There are newer next generation members of the profession who I think it helps to understand what it was like, because sometimes they'll have negative comments about the way we used to do things, like, you stockbrokers were terrible. It was a proud thing back when I got started to say you were a stockbroker.
Yeah,
it wasn't a negative thing, and it had nothing to do with greed and what was greed is good, or whatever that quote is from the movie. It was all about this was helping investors get to intelligent investment decisions with a financial planning concept in mind, but there was no formal financial planning curriculum. In fact, I'm guessing the CFP wasn't even around.
Yeah.
Certainly not in its current form back in those days.
Yeah, and I can't blame someone for that, because like if you just think about, like, then, like, the index fund was fairly new. Like people didn't even use index funds on a regular basis, and now they're the most prominent, like, investment tool out there. So the fact that being a stockbroker was the way to manage money is just the way. That's just how financial planning works. It's a constant learning profession. Like, not only do we have CEs that we have to accomplish, but like, we're constantly learning because new research becomes available, new rules are passed, new laws are passed, and all of these dynamics changes things. There are certain, like, bond funds are a good example where, like, if you're looking at a junk bond fund, you may not want the index. But because of index funds, the prices of those types of funds have gone down so much that it becomes more viable. And so, like, I can't blame someone for the past, the way it used to be, because that's just the way it was and what people, like, knew at the time. And just like me, when I get new research, I adapt. The profession adapted as well.
Yeah. No, if we didn't learn and grow from where we came, whether it was 30 or 40 years ago or 10 years ago, we're not doing our profession and our clients the kind of service and information and planning that mm-hmm. they deserve. So speaking of planning, let's change the conversation here a little bit. Tell me a little bit about you and your business. One of your focuses is working with therapists, which I find to be an interesting niche to focus in on. How did you get there, and what are some of the things that you find is unique about working with professionals in that space?
Yeah. So when I first started like looking for my own book, and I started from scratch, like I had 0 clients and no prospects and whatnot. I was just like, okay, let me. I want to work with the self-employed, because while you listed like some publications that I work for, in reality, like I work for many publications. I was a freelance writer. I like to say contract writer, since freelance is like, sounds like I'm doing it for free. And I worked for myself for about 10 years like that, and did just fine like that, and was able to build wealth and all that sort of thing. And so when I made this sort of shift, I was like, okay, I want to work with the self-employed, like people like me, because, I've been there and whatnot. But when I found out, like, as I started doing like marketing and stuff, like it's really hard to target just self-employed people. It's still a very broad bucket. And meanwhile, like I wanted to make a switch in my career for many years. And so I had a therapist that I was working with. And so I'd be talking with him and sort of ways that I could make the change over the many years. And I probably wouldn't have made the change without him. But in those conversations, I've also started learning about his business. And I realized, hey, it's the same type of business. They just have compliance issues that I didn't have as a writer. And so from there, I started doing that. Focusing on private practice owners in particular. And what I've learned is that there's a huge range of wealth within that industry. There's some that just barely get by, and there's many people that do really, really well. And the complexity of the businesses can vary dramatically as well. But it gave me platforms and tools that I could then reach into that audience a bit. But I would say that, like, it doesn't mean that just because I did that, I only work with therapists now. Like, the beauty of it is that's one part of my planning arm. But I have other arms that the skill sets that I've learned here have helped me target some, other areas as well, or perform better. Sorry about that. Perform better for other clients who have just more traditional sort of careers.
So talk a little bit more about therapists in particular. One of the things I think, and maybe this is me stereotyping, is that sometimes it is more difficult for advisors to work with clients who are more analytical. And I would think because therapists are great at digging and asking questions and analyzing, that could create some challenges in working with them. Is that?
So I would say, and I don't want to, cast a wide, what's the term? Like a wide cloth over the entire industry. But I would say just in general, actually therapists have avoided money for many years. And even if they're successful, like they're not really money is a scary thing to them, in the sense that it's not what they've wanted to focus on. They're very emotional focused and soft skills focused, that the numbers and cents they get really overwhelmed with a lot of times. And so, yeah, they may ask a lot of questions, but it's really just to put their mind at ease of what I'm suggesting or I'm guiding them on. And in that process, what you're really doing is building trust with them. And then they can be a very loyal customer because of that trust that you build. So it's almost like using that kind of mindset, the willingness to ask questions and that sort of thing, to help as part of the planning process, because really what you're doing is getting them comfortable with you and creating a client that's going to stay with you for many, many years.
So I would imagine that therapists are similar to people in other, what I would call do-good professions, where there is a concern that because they're making money from doing good, that there might be something not so good about their money and the wealth that they're building. Is that part of the conversation that comes out? And I
Every
know I'm being broad brush, but I
yeah.
see it with Christian leaders or pastors.
Hmm.
They've been good savers. They've actually had good financial planning advice, and they've built something, and they're almost embarrassed
Yeah.
by it.
Yeah. And so I would say, in general, the ones that have built a sizable business and have really made very little wealth from that, that's what I see. Those are the folks that are the ones who are like afraid to put things in place because they feel guilty of the fact that they're building something that's successful. Or what they do is they give their clinicians, their employees essentially, way too many benefits or pay to try and make up for the fact that and what it ends up doing is make the business worse off. And so it's actually putting the entire clinic at risk because of that. So I see that a lot. The other thing I see is a lot of therapists actually come from other careers. And so those therapists that have come from other careers, they're career changers, they have put their heart and soul into something else that didn't quite work out or for whatever, and now they're in therapy as a therapist. They can be a little more willing to just be like, this is my career, this is what I'm doing, and I want to like build wealth. And those are like dream clients when they come around because they have already experienced the other side of it. They've already gotten past this notion that like building wealth is somehow bad, whereas the lifelong therapist that's built a pretty sizable clinic, that person can still hold that kind of reservation.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
It's like any niche. And as I'm coaching and working with advisors who are in niches, and you even talked about niching down from just the self-employed, because I hear people say, well, I work with pre-retirees, and I say, well, that just means you only work with half of the people in the world, not the other half that are retired.
Exactly.
So that niching down is challenging. You learn things, and you also learn inside of those niches that not everybody is exactly the same. Not every therapist is like every other therapist, just like every financial advisor is not like every other financial advisor.
Yeah, and it honestly, it's really helpful in the sense of, especially for folks who are starting out, because like when you've had the experience that you've had, or what I hope to have in the next decade or so. Yeah, I want like 100 or so clients, and I'm investing for them, and we're doing financial planning, and they all have a set sort of background or like similarities and whatnot. But what really happens when you're starting out is you are creating ways to work with clients or prospects that meet them where they're at. And so like I have subscription offerings, I have one-time plan offerings, I have full wealth management offerings, because there's many different types of folks that I'm experiencing on a day-to-day, and I want to be able to help them where kind of ever they are, with the belief that they're going to continue to build wealth, and I'm going to be along that journey with them.
Yeah, because it's really more about being a part of a journey, and less about where they may be in their journey now. And depending on where you are in your business and how you're trying to build it, you may find it more difficult to meet people at different places. You only want to meet them in a certain place, and that's okay. But I think it's something that you need to make a decision about. Too often, I think financial advisors, actually business owners in general, don't make decisions about who they want to work with.
Yeah.
They just by default have, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G clients. And it just becomes way too complicated. Whereas if they said, these are the places that I can help the best. And I need my A clients, but I really love, having that next tier of clients that I can help too, whether it's because I want to do some pro bono work or because I want to work with a different generation and help them as they turn into that A client. It needs to be a decision, not just a something that you just kind of happen into.
Agreed. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying like everyone that comes through the door is like the right one, right? It's more like, does this person fit the profile of where you want them, where you think they will go in their career? And if so, can you be along for that journey type of thing? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a discernment that's required in that. It's not just an automatic. And I'm a process guy. So sometimes a lot of people say, what's your process? Where are they going to plug in? But let me change directions here a little bit, because something's jumped into my brain, I guess, while we were talking. Is you are an expert at questions.
Mm-hmm.
You were an interviewer in your publishing or your writing career, and now you ask lots of questions as a financial planner. Talk about the importance of questions and maybe what you learned as a journalist that helps you ask the right questions to really get to know your client so you can serve them well.
Yeah, I think I'll start with the second part of that question first. What I learned was just the willingness to sit in kind of uncomfortable space with them. And, for when you were writing, it's more to get like the right type of information. But now it's like to get at the heart of what they actually want to do and what they're trying to achieve. And like I said, like I would say shame is probably the number one emotion that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, because people who have no money feel like they should have more, or people who have a ton of money feel like they don't deserve it, or anything like that in between. And I am very comfortable just sitting there talking about sort of why that is, not as a therapist, but as just as a confidant, like I'm trying to like understand where they're coming from to best guide them and help them see another path there. And so I'm willing to sit in that. I think one of the bigger surprises that when people come and speak to me is that I am not just talking about numbers and cents. I'm talking about their life. Like I'm talking about their goals. I'm talking about what they want to achieve with the money that they're making or that they will make. And they're all about like, okay, well, here's this, go. And I'm like, well, we need to figure out what we're going to do with this. And I think they're kind of caught off guard. And then that's where the willingness to just kind of chat with them a little bit. And that's just a conversation, so much of like people's views of journalism is like what they see on TV, where it's like one person asking a question and another person being really tense and like, I don't want to give anything away. When in reality, like most of the time when you're doing an interview, it's just conversation. And when we're doing the interviews with clients, it's just a conversation. It's just different goals in those conversations.
Right. And I think maybe those of us who have this Hollywood movie version of a reporter think, well, they've been studying so they can ask that one question, so they immediately get the right answer that they can then, write the article about that everybody, can't put down.
Sure.
And the truth is that it all starts with one question, probably shutting up a little bit, and then repeating back or digging in and saying, well, this is what I heard you say. Tell me more. And then digging in. I recently finished some training as a chaplain because I do some prison ministry. And one of the courses that I took was all about the ministry of listening, and I just lost the word. I had it in my mind, of presence, just the ministry of presence, of just being with someone and listening to them. And as I was taking this class and thinking about that, I was thinking, well, that's what I do as a I did as a financial planner. That's what I do as a podcast host. That's what I do as a coach of financial advisors. There's a lot of ministry of presence, asking questions, being with people. As you talked about, sometimes reporters sit there and it's really uncomfortable because you've asked a tough question. And then you've got to dig deeper, just be willing to listen and be uncomfortable till you can get to that point where the rubber meets the road that you described, where the client and the advisor realize that it's not just about the numbers that you uncovered, it's about the life that you're helping them lead because you're helping them with their planning, because it's really important work.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure your listeners have heard this before, but like just not talking can create more response from clients. Like just sitting there asking a question, they answer, they think they're done, you think there's more, and you just sit there in silence. It's going to encourage a little bit more response. And that is often the part that is actually the truth. And just letting them kind of ramble because people are uncomfortable with that silence can actually get to the heart of what the concern is.
Yeah, and that's the thing upon which trust is built, which builds long-term relationships, which is obviously very fulfilling as a financial professional, but also really helping that client live out their purpose.
Yeah. And, hey, saving them a bunch of money is also really fun too. Like using when they come in and I had a client get an inheritance on a house and they got a really bad appraisal. Like the appraisal came in like $400,000 less than what the house was going to be listed for like a month later with only minor changes. And it was going to be a significant tax bill. And they came in and I was like, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to get a new appraisal. We're going to go through this process with the estate and whatnot. And we ended up at the appraisal where they only see gains of like 30,000. Like that is a huge improvement. And so that's also going to build trust. So it's good to build trust with the person, but you also have to be good at what you do. You got to like study, you got to like learn these things because that's what's eventually going to keep them coming back. It's not just the conversation, it's the conversation with the knowledge.
Right. It's applying the wisdom to the information that you've gained to be able to put it into action. You can't have one without the other, but I think sometimes we maybe try to reverse them. It's like, I can, anyway, we don't need to go there. So Ryan,
I agree with you.
It is about time to land the plane. As you think about our conversation, is there something maybe that we didn't get to that you'd love to share with the audience?
Yeah, I would say, but based on where I'm in my career, I'm going to speak particularly to those who are kind of adjusting or just getting into it. Like it's not a straight line in building that niche or that book or that client base and whatnot. Instead, it's really bumpy, and you're going to read a book or hear some advice and be like, oh, this is how I'm going to get to that next level. And it may get you, but in reality, it's all the books and all the advice that's kind of building together to kind of create that system and that process and the confidence and all that, where all of those are working together, where that's really starts to build. I'm about 3 years in, and I'm really starting to see some of that like come to fruition. And it's really, really awesome to see because, 3 years ago, it felt like climbing Everest.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because we do have a lot of what I call next gen advisors on this. You're an older next gen advisor because you're deeper into your adult life, into your career. But that's some great perspective, because I do think there is a tendency to think we can push the easy button. Maybe there's like the 3 magic books we can read. And a lot of that wisdom comes from being in the trenches and actually talking to people and seeing how what they learned in the books shows up in the real world. And I'm sure as you shifted from the way that you asked questions as a reporter to the way that you ask them now, there was some similarity, but because the questions were meaningful for a different reason, that helped you increase the wisdom that you have around what it takes to be a top-level financial planner.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, even just the way I talk to people has to adjust a little bit. And sometimes I need to be more blunt with people. Sometimes I need to be less blunt with people. It depends on the person, depends on the situation. I think that may be one of the bigger surprises is just how when you're having to tell someone some disappointing news, like you just have to tell them, like they understand to a point their financial situation, and you need to kind of put it into words so they can make the changes that they need to make, because they may understand it, but they don't really understand the reality of it, and you understand the reality of it. So that was one of the bigger changes, just being like, hey, like we need to get this stuff in order or else your future is not looking so bright. So
Yeah, and sometimes that is the most challenging part of giving financial planning advice is to be able to speak the truth about where things are, so that you can actually work on them, because you can't fix something if you don't.
Yeah, and you're doing a disservice if you do.
Yeah.
If you
Awesome.
don't do it.
Well, Ryan, this has been a great conversation. As we end here, I'd love for you to tell the audience the best way to get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a financial planner, feel free, connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, my full name. And then if you are just a listener who wants to reach out and find some time to chat, I'm at thinkingcap.com. It's kind of where I do some marketing. And then I also have a newsletter there that you can sign up for.
Awesome. And we'll put links to your LinkedIn profile, your website, and your newsletter in the show notes so that it will be easy for our listeners to get there. To our listeners, again, as always, thank you for listening in. And remember, we'll see you next week, and we're rooting for your success. Take care.
Thanks for listening to The Purpose Focused Advisor. If today's episode gave you something to think about or a step you're ready to take, head over to truestfancoaching.com. There you'll find tools, resources, and ways we can work together to help you lead with purpose and build the business and life you were meant for. If you enjoyed the show, we'd be grateful if you take a moment to rate and review it. It helps more advisors find their way here.